I'm holding a certified letter that could change my daughter's life forever, and she has no idea it exists. September 15th, 2023. I'm sitting in Harold Chen's law office on the 14th floor of a building in downtown Minneapolis, and my hands won't stop shaking. The letter is from my wife Margaret, my late wife, I should say, though the words still catch in my throat like broken glass. She's been gone for 68 days. I've counted every single one. Harold is watching me with these careful eyes, the way people look at you when they think you might shatter. He's just told me something impossible. Margaret left our daughter Jennifer $5 million. $5 million. The number doesn't even sound real when I say it out loud. But here's the thing that makes this whole situation feel like some kind of cosmic joke. Jennifer hasn't spoken to me in 4 months. Not since July 12th, when she walked out of her mother's funeral reception without saying goodbye. Not since I stood there in the church basement, surrounded by casseroles and condolences, and realized her coat was gone from the rack. I'm the executor. Harold explained it to me twice because I couldn't quite process it the first time. I have full discretionary power over when this inheritance gets distributed. I can take my time, weeks, months, however long I need to settle the estate properly. And sitting there in that leather chair, looking at Margaret's handwriting on documents she signed while she was dying, I made a decision that I'm still not sure makes me a good person or a terrible one. I decided to wait. My daughter abandoned me when I needed her most. She left me alone in the wreckage of the worst loss of my life. And now I'm holding the key to everything she doesn't know she's waiting for, everything she probably thinks she deserves. The question isn't whether I'll give it to her eventually. Margaret wanted her to have it. That's clear from the letter I'm holding, written in my wife's shaky handwriting from those last terrible weeks. I pray this gives Jennifer security and freedom, she wrote, security and freedom. But what Margaret didn't know, what she couldn't have known, was that Jennifer would vanish the moment we lowered her into the ground. So I made my choice. I would wait and watch. I would see what my daughter does when she thinks there's nothing left to gain from me. When she thinks I'm just a grieving old man in an empty house with nothing to offer her except inconvenient emotions and uncomfortable memories. Harold asked me that day if I was sure. He's known our family for 15 years. He did Margaret's estate planning, helped us with the house refinance back in 2015, even came to Jennifer's wedding in 2019. He knows this isn't like me. "Rick," he said, and his voice was gentle but firm, "you're within your legal rights. But I need to know this is what you really want. Once we start down this road." "She drove past my house 3 times last month," I interrupted him. "My neighbor Dorothy told me. Jennifer drove down our street, slowed down in front of the house, and then kept going. 3 times, never stopped, never knocked." Harold nodded slowly. He didn't try to talk me out of it after that. "The truth is, I don't know if what I'm doing is justice or revenge. I don't know if I'm protecting Margaret's memory or disrespecting her final wishes. I don't know if I'm teaching my daughter a lesson she needs to learn, or if I'm just a bitter old man who can't accept that grief looks different for everyone. What I do know is this. Margaret spent 32 years building a life with me. She spent 9 months dying, and in those months, she somehow managed to secretly arrange $5 million for the daughter who couldn't be bothered to visit her more than twice. And that daughter couldn't give me 4 months of compassion. So yes, I'm going to wait. And this is the story of what happened when I did. Before I tell you what happened next, I need to be honest with you about something. I've spent months questioning whether what I did was right. I've lain awake at 3 in the morning, staring at the ceiling of the bedroom I shared with Margaret for 32 years, wondering if I'm the villain in this story. Wondering if grief turned me into someone she wouldn't recognize. The truth is, I still don't know. But if you're the kind of person who appreciates real stories about family conflicts, the messy, complicated kind where there are no easy answers and nobody's hands are completely clean, then please hit that like button and subscribe to this channel. Because what I'm about to share with you pushed me to my absolute limits as a father, as a husband, and as a human being trying to do the right thing in an impossible situation. I can tell you this much. The ending surprised even me. Justice doesn't always look the way we expect it to. Sometimes it's not about punishment or revenge. Sometimes it's just about holding up a mirror and making people see exactly who they've become. But I'm getting ahead of myself. To understand why I made the choice I did that day in Harold's office, you need to understand how my daughter Jennifer went from being the little girl who used to make me Father's Day cards out of construction paper to being someone who could walk away from my grief without a backward glance. You need to know who we were before everything fell apart. Margaret smelled like cinnamon and old books. That's the first thing that comes to mind when I think about our life together. Every Sunday morning for 32 years, she'd wake up before dawn and make cinnamon rolls from scratch. Not the kind from a can, the real kind, with dough that had to rise overnight and filling she'd mix herself with brown sugar and way too much butter. By the time I stumbled downstairs at 7, the whole house would smell like a bakery. She'd be sitting at the kitchen table in her reading glasses, grading art projects from her high school students, a cup of Earl Grey steaming next to her elbow. We bought that table in 1991 from a yard sale on Lindale Avenue. Paid $45 for it. It wobbled if you leaned on the left side. I'm Rick Morrison, 58 years old now, though some days I feel like I'm 112. I spent 34 years as a civil engineer for Hennepin County, designing bridges and drainage systems, the kind of work nobody thinks about until something goes wrong. Margaret used to joke that I made sure Minneapolis didn't float away. We lived in a 4-bedroom house in the suburbs, the kind of neighborhood where people still wave to each other, and the biggest excitement is arguing about snow removal at city council meetings. Margaret collected vintage teacups. She had 73 of them, displayed on floating shelves in our dining room. Every single one had a story. This one from an estate sale in Stillwater, that one from our anniversary trip to London, another from her grandmother who raised her after her parents died. Jennifer was our miracle. We tried for 7 years to have a baby. 7 years of doctor's appointments and disappointments and Margaret crying in the bathroom while I stood helplessly outside the door. When Jennifer finally came along in 1990, we were both 36 years old and convinced it would never happen. Maybe that's why we spoiled her. Probably, if I'm being honest. Piano lessons starting at age 5. Dance classes, ballet, tap, jazz. Summer camps at the YMCA. A college education at the University of Minnesota that we paid for entirely, draining our savings so she could graduate debt-free. We wanted to give her everything we never had. We wanted her to feel secure and loved and like the world was full of possibilities. I remember teaching her to ride a bike in our driveway on her 7th birthday. July 23, 1997. It was one of those perfect Minnesota summer days, about 85 degrees, the kind of heat that makes the asphalt shimmer like water. Jennifer had on pink shorts and a Spice Girls t-shirt. She was terrified. "Daddy, don't let go," she kept saying. "I won't, sweetheart, I've got you." Margaret was sitting on the porch steps, drinking lemonade and laughing every time Jennifer wobbled. I can still hear that laugh. It was this bright, unself-conscious sound that made everyone around her want to laugh too. When Jennifer finally got her balance and pedaled down to the end of the driveway on her own, Margaret jumped up and cheered like she was watching the Olympics. Jennifer's face, the pure joy and pride on her face, I thought my heart might burst. For 29 years we were like that. Close. Connected. The kind of family that actually enjoyed spending time together. We did camping trips every summer to the Boundary Waters, where the stars are so thick you can't see the darkness between them. We had Sunday dinners where Jennifer would complain about her high school teachers and Margaret would defend them because she was one. We celebrated every small achievement and mourned every small loss together. But something shifted when Jennifer married Brad Fletcher in June 2019. Brad came from money. Real money. The kind where you have a family portfolio and legacy trusts and parents who belong to country clubs. He worked in hedge fund management, which I never fully understood except that it made him the kind of salary that turned our comfortable middle-class life into something he viewed as quaint. That's the word Jennifer started using. Quaint. "Your neighborhood is so quaint, Dad," she said one Sunday, and I could hear the judgment underneath it. She started missing dinners. Always a reason. Brad's work thing, Brad's family thing. They were tired, they were busy. When she did come, Brad would hover near the door like he was being held hostage, checking his watch, making comments about having an early morning. "You know," Jennifer mentioned casually one afternoon in 2021, "you and Mom should really think about selling this place, moving somewhere safer, more modern." Margaret defended her. She always defended Jennifer. "She's adjusting to married life," Margaret would say. "It's normal for adult children to separate a little." "We're not losing her, Rick, we're just sharing her." I wanted to believe that. God, I wanted to believe it. Then March 2023 happened. Margaret went in for what she thought was a stomach bug and came home with a diagnosis of stage 4 pancreatic cancer. The doctor gave her 6 to 12 months. She got 4.5. Jennifer visited exactly 11 times during those 4.5 months. I counted. Each visit lasted less than an hour, and Brad came to every single one, standing in the corner of our living room like a sentry, radiating impatience. Margaret never complained. She'd just hold Jennifer's hand and ask about her life, and Jennifer would give these surface-level answers about work and renovations and vacation plans, never quite meeting her mother's eyes. I watched my wife die slowly, and I watched my daughter slowly disappear. But I didn't know, not yet, that the disappearing had only just begun. Margaret died on July 8, 2023 at exactly 3:47 in the morning. I know the time because I was watching the clock on our nightstand, counting the seconds between her breaths. They'd been getting further apart all night, 10 seconds, then 15, then 20. The hospice nurse had told me this was normal, that the body shuts down in stages, but nothing about watching your wife of 32 years stop breathing felt normal. At 3:46, she took a breath that rattled in her chest like dried leaves. At 3:47, there was nothing, just silence, complete and absolute silence. I kept holding her hand, waiting for the next breath that never came. Her hand was still warm. That's what I couldn't process. How could she be gone when her hand was still warm? I sat there for 7 minutes before I could make myself reach for the phone to call the nurse. Outside, birds were starting to sing. Morning birds greeting the dawn like it was just another beautiful summer day. The cheerfulness of it felt obscene. Didn't they know the world had just ended? Didn't they know they were supposed to be silent? The funeral was on July 12th at Lakewood Cemetery. 203 people came. I counted them because I couldn't focus on anything else, couldn't listen to the pastor talk about Margaret's life and faith and legacy. I just counted people and tried not to think about how the casket was closed because she'd wanted it that way. Margaret had been a high school art teacher for 28 years. Her former students came, some of them in their 40s now, with their own children. They told me stories about how she'd believed in them, how she'd stayed after school to help them with college applications, how she'd bought art supplies out of her own pocket for kids who couldn't afford them. My wife had touched so many lives, and I'd been too focused on losing her to realize how many people had loved her. The reception was in the church basement. You know the kind, fluorescent lights, folding tables with plastic tablecloths, industrial coffee in enormous urns. People kept bringing casseroles. Tuna casserole, chicken casserole, something with tater tots that I couldn't identify. They'd squeeze my shoulder and say things like she's in a better place, and at least she's not suffering anymore. And I'd nod because I didn't know what else to do. I was standing near the coffee station, holding a styrofoam cup I hadn't drunk from when I realized Jennifer and Brad were gone. Not bathroom gone. Gone. I walked over to the coat rack near the entrance. Brad's expensive wool coat, the one that probably cost more than my monthly mortgage payment, wasn't there. Neither was Jennifer's. They'd left without saying goodbye. I called her cell 4 times that evening. It went straight to voicemail every time. At 11:04 p.m. I finally got a text. "Today was overwhelming, need space, will call soon." She didn't call. The days after a funeral are the worst. Everyone disappears back into their normal lives, and you're left alone with the silence and the casseroles, and the fact that everything has changed, but the world keeps spinning like nothing happened. I started going through Margaret's things because I didn't know what else to do with myself. Her closet still smelled like her lavender soap. She'd used the same brand for 15 years, ordered it special from a little shop in California. I'd hold her sweaters to my face and breathe in, trying to memorize the scent before it faded. In her nightstand drawer, I found a bundle of letters tied with a ribbon. Love letters from when we were dating in the 80s, written on notebook paper and sealed with drugstore envelopes. She'd kept every single one. My handwriting looked so young and earnest, full of promises about the life we'd build together. We'd kept those promises, all of them. I also found a journal, a simple composition notebook with her handwriting on every page. She'd started it in March when she got the diagnosis. I opened it once, saw the date March 17, 2023, and the first line, "I need to write this down because I'm afraid I'll forget," and I had to close it. I wasn't ready. I might never be ready. On August 3rd, I sent Jennifer a text. "Sweetheart, we need to discuss estate matters and your mother's wishes. Can we meet for coffee this week?" 5 days later, 5 days, she responded. "Just have the lawyer handle everything. Too painful to think about right now. Too painful for her." I read that text 17 times, trying to find some hidden meaning, some indication that she understood what she was saying, that she was dismissing not just me, but her mother's entire legacy, that she couldn't spare an hour for coffee with her grieving father because it was too painful. Something broke in me that day. Something fundamental that I don't think ever healed properly. I'd lost my wife. That was the worst thing that had ever happened to me, and I knew it always would be. But I was also losing my daughter, and she was choosing to go. She was walking away voluntarily, and I didn't understand why. Margaret would have known what to do. Margaret would have called Jennifer and somehow made it okay, would have found the words to bridge whatever gap had opened between us. But Margaret was gone, and I was alone in a house full of her things and her smell and her absence, and my daughter couldn't be bothered to have coffee with me. That's when I started to wonder what Jennifer was really waiting for. And that's when I started to suspect it wasn't me. August bled into September, and September crawled into October, and the grief didn't get smaller. I just got more used to carrying it. Every Sunday morning, I still made cinnamon coffee. I'd stand at the counter at 7 a.m., measuring out the grounds and the cinnamon stick Margaret always insisted on using instead of powder, and I'd make enough for 2 people even though I was the only one who'd drink it. The routine felt important, like if I stopped, I'd be admitting she was really gone. I started talking to her teacup collection. I know how that sounds, but the house was so quiet, and sometimes I needed to hear a voice, even if it was just my own. I'd narrate my day to the 73 teacups on their shelves. "Had a meeting about the 3rd Avenue Bridge project today. You would have been bored to tears." Or, "Dorothy brought meatloaf again. I'm running out of freezer space." The teacups never answered, but they didn't leave either. That was more than I could say for my daughter. I tried reaching out. I kept trying because I didn't know what else to do. August 15th. "Thinking of you, sweetheart. How are you doing?" No response for 3 days. Then, "Fine." September 1st. "Your mom would want us to stay close. Can we have dinner?" 4 days later. "Busy with work, maybe next month." October 10th. "It's been 3 months. Please call me." 2 days. "I'm fine, busy with work." Work, always busy. Never a question about how I was doing. Never an acknowledgement that we'd both lost the same person. My neighbor Dorothy started bringing me meals twice a week. She's 72, a retired nurse who'd lived 3 houses down since 1987. She'd known Margaret, had coffee with her most Thursday mornings. On the 4th meal delivery, chicken pot pie on a Tuesday in late September, she finally asked, "Rick, honey, where's Jennifer? I haven't seen her car." I tried to explain it without crying. I failed. Dorothy didn't offer platitudes. She just stood in my kitchen and let me fall apart, and when I was done, she said, "Some people run from grief. They think if they don't look at it, it won't be real." For 4 months, I asked. She didn't have an answer for that. Work became my escape. I'd go into the office early and stay late, volunteering for projects nobody else wanted. My coworker Tom, we'd worked together for 19 years, noticed. He started inviting me to Friday poker nights with some guys from the department. I went because the alternative was sitting home alone, but I couldn't enjoy it. They'd laugh at jokes and argue about sports, and I'd sit there moving chips around, thinking about how Margaret used to wait up for me on poker nights, wanting to hear who won and whether Tom's wife had another baby yet. Everything reminded me of her. Everything highlighted her absence. November 3rd was Margaret's birthday. She would have been 57. I bought flowers and took them to the cemetery, stood there in the freezing wind talking to a headstone like I talked to the teacups. Told her about the Third Avenue project. Told her I was eating too much takeout. Told her I missed her so much some days I forgot how to breathe. I checked my phone obsessively that day, waiting for Jennifer to text, waiting for some acknowledgement that she remembered, that she cared. Nothing. Not a word. Thanksgiving, I bought a rotisserie chicken from the grocery store and ate it alone at the kitchen table while scrolling through photos on my phone. Jennifer at age 7 on her bike. Jennifer at her high school graduation. Jennifer and Margaret laughing at some joke I couldn't remember at Jennifer's wedding rehearsal dinner. I found myself checking Jennifer's Facebook page, something I'd never done before because it felt invasive. But I was desperate for any connection, any glimpse into her life. She'd posted photos. Lots of them. Jennifer and Brad at a fancy restaurant. Jennifer and Brad at some charity gala. Jennifer and Brad touring what looked like a mansion with a caption that read, "House hunting, we need more space to grow. Exciting new chapter, more space to grow." While I was shrinking into myself, disappearing into an empty house. That's when I finally understood. She hadn't stayed away because of grief. She'd stayed away because she was moving on. Up and away from her quaint childhood home and her boring civil engineer father and the uncomfortable reality of loss. But there was something else happening, something I didn't tell anyone about. On September 15th, Harold Chen had called me into his office for the formal reading of Margaret's will. It was just the two of us. Jennifer had texted Harold the same thing she'd texted me. Too painful, just handle it. Harold read the will in his careful attorney voice, and with every paragraph, my world tilted further sideways. Margaret had inherited money from her Uncle Donald when he died in 2018. Not a fortune, about $400,000. But she'd invested it carefully, studied the market, made smart choices. Combined with decades of her own careful savings and investments I'd barely paid attention to, she'd built a portfolio worth $5 million. $5 million. She'd left it all to Jennifer, every penny. There was a letter attached, written in Margaret's handwriting during those final weeks. "I hope this gives you security and freedom, my darling girl. Use it to build a beautiful life. Love, Mom." I got the house and $200,000, enough to live on, enough to be comfortable. Margaret had made sure I'd be okay, but she'd given Jennifer everything else with a prayer that it would give her freedom. Harold explained my role as executor. I had full discretionary power over distribution timing. I could take as long as I needed to properly settle the estate, weeks, months, whatever was reasonable. "She doesn't know," I said. "No," Harold confirmed. "She hasn't asked about specifics, just told me to handle it." I sat in that office holding Margaret's letter to a daughter who couldn't be bothered to mourn with me, and I made a choice. I would wait, not forever, not to punish her, though maybe that was part of it, but to really see, if Jennifer would reach out for the right reasons, if she'd come back because she loved me, because she needed her father, because family mattered, not because of money she didn't know existed. Margaret had prayed the inheritance would give Jennifer freedom. I prayed it would reveal her character. I just wasn't sure which prayer would be answered. January 4th, 2024, at exactly 2:37 p.m., my phone rang with Jennifer's name on the screen. My heart did something acrobatic in my chest. 6 months. It had been 6 months since I'd heard her voice. I grabbed the phone so fast I nearly dropped it, my thumb fumbling over the answer button. "Jennifer, sweetheart. Rick." "Hey, it's Brad." The disappointment hit me like cold water. Of course it was Brad, of course. "Oh, Brad, hi." I tried to keep my voice neutral, tried not to let him hear how desperately I'd wanted it to be her. "Yes, sorry, I'm using Jen's phone. Mine died and I needed to make a few calls." His voice was casual, almost friendly, the tone you'd use with an acquaintance you ran into at the grocery store. "Hey, how are you doing? Recover from the holidays okay?" Recover from the holidays. Like the holidays were a bout of the flu. Like I hadn't spent Christmas Eve eating Chinese takeout alone while watching people on Facebook post family photos. "I'm managing," I said carefully. "Good, good, that's good." There was a pause and I could hear him moving around, the clink of ice in a glass. "So listen, Jennifer and I were talking and we were thinking. That house is probably a lot of space for just one person, you know. Have you thought about maybe downsizing? The market's pretty good right now for sellers. My hand tightened on the phone. I haven't thought about selling. Right, of course. It's just, maintenance on a place that size, property taxes, all that. Might be easier for you to have something smaller, less upkeep. Less upkeep. He was talking about the home where I'd raised his wife, where Margaret had died in my arms like it was an inconvenient appliance I should replace. I appreciate the concern, I said, and I didn't try very hard to sound like I meant it. Another pause, more ice clinking. He was building up to something, circling it like a shark. Jennifer was wondering, and I told her I'd ask since you guys haven't really connected lately. Are there any estate matters that still need attention? Any paperwork or anything that needs to be wrapped up? There it was. My hands started trembling. I stood up from the couch and walked to the window, looking out at the January snow covering the front yard. The yard where I'd taught Jennifer to ride a bike. The yard where Margaret had planted peonies every spring. Yes, I said slowly, there are estate matters. Oh, great. So when do you think those will be finalized? Is there a timeline or? I'll be in touch when everything's ready, I interrupted. It takes time to do it properly. Sure, of course. I just thought, 6 months, that seems like it should be enough time to. I'll be in touch, Brad. I hung up before he could respond. For several minutes I just stood there, staring out the window, my phone still clutched in my shaking hand. They hadn't called to ask how I was doing. They hadn't called because they missed me or were worried about me or felt guilty about 6 months of silence. They'd called to ask about the money. They didn't even know how much money it was. They just knew there had to be something, and they wanted to know when they'd get it. The validation felt like a punch to the gut. I'd been right about them, and being right felt absolutely terrible. At 6:15 that evening, Harold Chen called. "Rick, I need to give you a heads up. I got a call today from Brad Fletcher. Actually, from his attorney." His attorney. Apparently, Brad has retained counsel to inquire about expediting the probate process. His lawyer used phrases like undue delay and executor's fiduciary responsibility. I sat down heavily at the kitchen table. Can they do that? They can try, but you're well within legal parameters. The estate is complex and you have full discretionary authority under the will. As long as you're acting in good faith, which you are, you can take whatever time you need. So they're threatening legal action to get their hands on money faster. In essence, yes. After we hung up, I sat in the dark kitchen for a long time. Margaret's teacup collection glowed faintly in the streetlight coming through the window. 73 witnesses to my indecision. I'd read Margaret's journal on New Year's Eve. I'd finally felt ready, or maybe I'd just run out of reasons to avoid it. Her words had been honest and raw, full of fear and love and hope. One entry from April 2023 kept echoing in my head. I worry that Jennifer loves the idea of wealth more than the work of family. She's always looking at what she doesn't have instead of treasuring what she does. I see her looking at other people's houses, other people's lives with this hunger in her eyes. I hope I'm wrong. I pray this money will free her to be who she's meant to be, not change her into someone we wouldn't recognize. But I'm scared, Rick. I'm scared she's already changing and I won't be here to help her find her way back. Margaret had seen it. She'd seen it and hoped the money would be the cure instead of the poison. Sitting in that dark kitchen, I made my decision. I would wait, I would watch. I would stay silent about the $5 million and see exactly how far Jennifer and Brad would go. I owed Margaret that much. I owed myself that much. And maybe, just maybe, I owed Jennifer the chance to prove her mother wrong. Harold Chen became my unlikely ally in what I can only describe as a months-long test of my daughter's character. He's 54 years old, a third-generation attorney whose grandfather immigrated from Taiwan in 1952 and built the law practice from nothing. Harold inherited not just the firm but a deep sense of duty about doing right by people. He'd known Margaret through her volunteer work at the Asian American Community Center, where she taught free art classes to immigrant kids every other Saturday for 12 years. "Your wife was one of the good ones," he told me during one of our many meetings that winter. "And what Jennifer's doing, what they're both doing, it's not just legally questionable, it's morally bankrupt." Harold kept me updated on every development, and there were many. Brad's attorney, a guy named Mitchell Sorensen who apparently specialized in estate disputes, called Harold's office 6 times in January alone. Each call escalated in tone, using phrases like unreasonable delays and breach of fiduciary duty and threatening to file motions with the probate court. Harold would call me after each one, and I could hear the satisfaction in his voice when he'd say, "I told him you're well within your rights and he can file whatever motions he wants. They'll be dismissed." But I wasn't just relying on Harold's reports. I was watching, observing, trying to understand what was really happening in Jennifer and Brad's life that made them so desperate. Social media became my window into their world, pathetic as that sounds. Jennifer's Facebook page told 2 different stories depending on how closely you looked. Her posts in January talked about navigating difficult times and learning what really matters with sad face emojis and inspirational quotes about resilience. The comments section filled up with friends offering support. "You're so strong," and sending love. But her photos told a different story. Expensive restaurants. I recognized one as Spoon and Stable, where the tasting menu costs $200 per person. A weekend trip to Cabo in February. Shopping bags from Nordstrom and designer boutiques. Financial stress apparently looked a lot like luxury. In late February, Dorothy knocked on my door on a Thursday afternoon. She had that look on her face, the one that said she had information I needed but didn't want to hear. "I saw Jennifer's car drive by twice this week," she said. "Tuesday around noon and yesterday around 3. Both times she slowed down in front of your house, just sat there for maybe 30 seconds, then drove on. She didn't stop." "No, honey, she didn't stop." I felt something twist in my chest. She'd driven past, twice. Close enough to see the house, close enough to knock on the door, but not close enough to actually face me. What was she looking for? Signs of life, signs of weakness, signs that I was struggling enough to hurry the estate along. The next piece of the puzzle came from Susan Yao, one of Margaret's closest friends from the community center. She called me in early March, hesitant and apologetic. "Rick, I don't know if I should tell you this, but I think you should know. Jennifer called me last week." "She called you?" "Yes." She asked how I was doing, made small talk for a few minutes. Then she asked about Margaret's financial situation, whether Margaret had ever mentioned investments or savings, whether she'd talked about what she was leaving behind. My hand tightened on the phone. "What did you tell her?" I said I didn't know anything about Margaret's finances. It felt wrong, Rick. She didn't ask about you, didn't ask how you were coping, just wanted to know about money. After we hung up, I sat at the kitchen table and made a list of everything I knew: Brad's increasingly aggressive attorney calls, Jennifer's social media performance of struggle while living large, driving past the house but never stopping, calling Margaret's friends to fish for information about assets. The pattern was clear. They needed money desperately, probably because Brad's hedge fund had hit trouble in the volatile market, probably because they'd over-leveraged themselves into a lifestyle they couldn't sustain. But they were too proud to admit they were struggling and too greedy to reconnect with me without an agenda. Harold confirmed my suspicions in mid-March when he did some discreet checking. Brad's fund took significant losses in the last 2 quarters of 2023, he told me over coffee at a shop near his office. Public filings show they're down almost 40%. And I have a colleague who does bankruptcy law. He says they're 3 months behind on their mortgage. The bank hasn't foreclosed yet, but it's coming. So they're desperate. They're drowning. And they think your wife's estate is the life raft. On March 18th, I received a certified letter at my home. It was from Mitchell Sorensen, Brad's attorney, written on expensive letterhead in aggressive legal language. The key phrase jumped out at me. "We hereby demand immediate distribution of all estate assets to the designated beneficiary, Jennifer Morrison Fletcher, in accordance with the decedent's wishes. Continued delay constitutes a breach of executor's duty and potential grounds for removal and legal action." Harold read it and actually laughed. This is intimidation theater. He has no grounds, but it tells me they're getting desperate enough to try anything. I should have expected what came next, but it still hit me like a physical blow. On March 22nd at 7:43 p.m., Jennifer called, not Brad, Jennifer herself. I was eating reheated soup when my phone rang with her name. I let it go to voicemail. I needed to hear what she'd say when she thought I wasn't listening. The voicemail lasted 97 seconds. I know because I listened to it 17 times. Her voice was sharp, nothing like the daughter I remembered. "Dad, this is ridiculous. I don't know what you're trying to prove by dragging out Mom's estate, but it's cruel and it's vindictive. She wanted me to have her things, and you're holding them hostage to punish me for what? For grieving differently than you, for needing space. You're being selfish and you're disrespecting Mom's wishes. Call me back and let's settle this like adults." There was no "I miss you." No "how are you holding up?" No acknowledgement that we were both mourning the same person. Just anger, entitlement, accusation. I played that voicemail over and over, searching for some trace of the Jennifer I'd raised. The girl who used to leave me construction paper Father's Day cards. The teenager who'd cried on my shoulder when her first boyfriend broke her heart. The young woman who'd asked me to walk her down the aisle just 5 years ago. She wasn't in that voicemail. I couldn't find her anywhere in those 97 seconds of rage and greed. Harold called me the next morning. "It's time," he said simply. "Time for what? Time to end this. But on your terms, Rick, not theirs." We scheduled a formal estate distribution meeting for April 15th, 2024 at 10:00 a.m. at Harold's office. He drafted an official notice and sent it via certified mail to both Jennifer and Brad. The notice was beautifully simple. "You are hereby notified of a mandatory estate distribution meeting regarding the estate of Margaret Louise Morrison, deceased. Your attendance is required. April 15, 2024, 10:00 a.m. Chen and Associates Law Offices." No details about amounts. No explanation. No preview of what was coming. Just a date, a time, and the word mandatory. I signed the notice, watching my hand move across the paper, and wondered if I was doing the right thing. Margaret's journal entry echoed in my mind. "I pray this money will free her, not change her." In 12 days, we'd find out which prayer had been answered. April 15th, 2024, 10 o'clock in the morning, exactly on time. Harold's conference room is on the 14th floor with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking downtown Minneapolis. Spring sunlight poured through the glass, making the mahogany table gleam. It was the kind of beautiful morning that felt completely at odds with what was about to happen. I arrived early. Harold had coffee waiting, the good kind, not office coffee, and we sat in silence for a few minutes, watching the clock. At 9:58, I heard voices in the reception area. My stomach clenched. Jennifer and Brad walked in at exactly 10:00 a.m. They'd arrived together but somehow felt separate, like two people performing a marriage rather than living one. Brad wore a suit that probably cost $3,000. Jennifer had on a designer dress I didn't recognize, her hair professionally styled, makeup perfect. They looked like they were going to a business meeting, not a family gathering. Everything about them screamed money, money they claimed not to have, money they were desperate to get. Jennifer's eyes found mine across the room. For just a second, I saw something flicker across her face. Guilt, fear, hope. It was gone before I could identify it. She walked over and hugged me. The hug lasted exactly 2 seconds, I counted, before she pulled away. "Hi, Dad," she said quietly. "Jennifer." Brad shook my hand with the grip of someone trying to prove something. "Rick, good to see you." We all sat, Harold at the head of the table, Jennifer and Brad on one side, me on the other. Like we were negotiating a business deal instead of settling the estate of the woman we'd all supposedly loved. Harold opened a leather portfolio and adjusted his glasses. "Thank you both for coming. Let's begin." He went through the preliminary language, dates, legal terminology, procedural requirements. I watched Jennifer fidget with her wedding ring, watched Brad's jaw clench and unclench. They were both vibrating with impatience, barely contained urgency. Harold looked up from his documents. "The estate of Margaret Louise Morrison has been fully inventoried and appraised. The total value, as of today's date, is $5.7 million. The number landed like a bomb in the silent room. Jennifer's eyes went so wide I could see white all around the irises. Her mouth opened but no sound came out. Brad leaned forward so fast his chair creaked, like a predator that had just spotted prey. "I'm sorry, did you say 5.7 million? "That's correct," Harold said calmly. Jennifer's hand flew to her throat. "But how? We never." Dad, you never said. Harold continued as if she hadn't spoken. The primary bequest, according to Margaret Morrison's last will and testament, executed on March 15th, 2023, reads as follows. He picked up the will and read directly from it, his voice formal and clear. I leave the entirety of my investment portfolio, currently valued at approximately $5 million, to my beloved daughter Jennifer Morrison Fletcher, with the prayer that this gift provides her security, freedom, and the ability to build a life of meaning and service. May she use these resources to build something beautiful, and may she never forget that true wealth is measured in love, not dollars. The silence that followed was absolute. Even the sounds from the street below seemed to disappear. Brad's sharp intake of breath broke it. $5 million. She left Jennifer $5 million. Yes, Harold set down the will. The portfolio consists of carefully managed investments, stocks, bonds, and mutual funds that Margaret accumulated and grew over approximately 15 years. She was quite financially savvy. Jennifer was crying now, mascara starting to run, her hands shaking. Dad, we didn't know, all this time I thought. You thought what? I asked. My voice came out steadier than I felt. That your mother died broke, that there was nothing to inherit. Is that why you didn't bother to call for 9 months? 9 months, Brad's voice cut through. He turned to me and there was something ugly in his expression. You've been sitting on $5 million for 9 months. I've been executing the estate properly, I said. As is my right and responsibility as executor. Harold intervened smoothly. Richard Morrison has full discretionary authority over distribution timing, as specified in the will. The estate has been in probate for 9 months, which is well within normal and legal parameters. Normal. Brad was standing now, his hands flat on the table. There's nothing normal about hiding $5 million from the beneficiary for 9 months. I didn't hide anything, I said, and I was surprised by how calm I sounded. You never asked. Not once did you call to ask about your mother, Jennifer. Not once did you ask how I was doing, how I was coping with losing my wife of 32 years. Jennifer was sobbing openly now. Dad, I'm so sorry, I didn't. I was grieving too, The only time I heard from you, I continued, pulling out my phone, was when Brad called to ask about estate matters. And then this. I pressed play on the voicemail. Jennifer's angry voice filled the conference room, sharp and accusatory. Dad, this is ridiculous. I don't know what you're trying to prove by dragging out Mom's estate, but it's cruel and it's vindictive. You're being selfish and you're disrespecting Mom's wishes. Jennifer's face went white as she heard her own words played back to her. Brad sat down heavily, his earlier aggression deflating. When the voicemail ended, I reached into my jacket and pulled out folded papers. I slid them across the table to Jennifer. Your mother kept a journal during her illness. This is from April 2023. Jennifer's hands trembled as she unfolded the pages. I watched her eyes scan her mother's handwriting, watched her face crumble as she read. I worry that Jennifer loves the idea of wealth more than the work of family. She's always looking at what she doesn't have instead of treasuring what she does. I hope I'm wrong. I pray this money will free her to be who she's meant to be, not change her into someone we wouldn't recognize. But I'm scared, Rick. I'm scared she's already changing. No, Jennifer whispered. No, no, no. Your mother saw it, I said quietly. She saw you changing, pulling away, valuing the wrong things, and she still left you everything. She still hoped you'd prove her wrong. Brad reached for the journal pages, but Jennifer pulled them away, clutching them to her chest, sobbing so hard her whole body shook. Here's what happens now, Harold said, his voice gentle but firm. He pulled out a document and set it in front of me. Rick signs the executor's release. The funds transfer to Jennifer within 48 hours, $5 million as Margaret wished. Wait, Brad said. Just like that, after 9 months of... Yes, I interrupted. Just like that. Because despite what you both think of me, despite the voicemail and the lawyer's letters and the threats, I'm not vindictive. I'm not holding your mother's wishes hostage, Jennifer. I'm honoring them. She wanted you to have this money, so you'll have it. I picked up the pen Harold offered and signed the release form. My signature looked strange and shaky on the paper. But, I continued, setting down the pen and looking directly at my daughter, you need to understand something. This money. It didn't cost your mother anything but time and smart decisions, but it cost you 9 months of your father's life. 9 months when we could have grieved together, could have supported each other, could have kept her memory alive together. And instead, you vanished. You drove past my house without stopping. You called your mother's friends to fish for information about assets. You had your husband's attorney threaten me. Jennifer looked up at me, her face destroyed, her makeup running in dark streaks. Dad, I'm so sorry. I don't know what happened to me. I don't know how I became this person. Your mother worried that wealth would change you, I said, but I don't think the wealth changed you, sweetheart. I think it just showed us who you'd already become. Harold cleared his throat gently. Jennifer, Brad, I need your signatures here to accept the distribution. Brad reached for the pen immediately. Jennifer sat frozen, staring at the journal pages in her hands, at her mother's fears written in her mother's handwriting. She was right about me, Jennifer whispered. She was right. She signed the papers. They both did. Harold witnessed, made copies, explained the transfer timeline. It was done. $5 million would change hands within 48 hours, and the space between my daughter and me felt wider than it had ever been. The conference room felt smaller now, the spring sunlight too bright, the air too thin. The papers were signed, but nobody moved. We all just sat there in the wreckage of what had just been revealed. Brad recovered first. He always would, that's who he was. Rick, look, if you just communicated about the estate value from the beginning, we could have avoided all this misunderstanding. I held up my hand and he stopped. The gesture surprised both of us. Don't, I said. Don't try to spin this into a communication problem. I know about the hedge fund losses, Brad. I know you're 3 months behind on your mortgage. I know the bank is circling. I know you needed this money desperately, and that's why you had your attorney send threatening letters. That's why Jennifer called her mother's friends fishing for information about assets. Brad's face went red, then pale. How did you? I'm not stupid. And neither was Margaret. She saw exactly what was happening. I turned to Jennifer, who was still clutching her mother's journal pages like a lifeline. Neither of you cared about me or your mother's memory. You cared about what you could get. That's not true, Jennifer whispered, but there was no conviction in it. Isn't it? Tell me one time, one single time in the last 9 months that you called to ask how I was doing. Not about the estate, not about probate, about me. About how I was handling losing the love of my life. She opened her mouth. Nothing came out. Dad, I'm so sorry, she finally managed, mascara running in dark tracks down her cheeks. I was grieving too, I handled it badly. I didn't know how to. You weren't grieving, Jennifer. My voice cracked and I hated myself for it. You were waiting for the check, the inheritance, the windfall that would solve all your problems. Do you know what I was doing? I was sitting in the house where you grew up, talking to your mother's teacup collection because I had no one else to talk to. I made cinnamon coffee every Sunday morning even though she wasn't there to drink it. I spent Thanksgiving alone with a rotisserie chicken from the grocery store while you posted pictures from Brad's parents' mansion. I didn't know you were. You didn't ask. You didn't care enough to ask. I was on my feet now, my hands shaking. You drove past my house where you grew up, where your mother died. You drove past twice and you didn't stop. You couldn't even knock on the door. You just slowed down and kept going. Jennifer's face crumpled. Dorothy told you. Yes, Dorothy told me, because Dorothy actually cares about me. A 72-year-old neighbor has shown me more compassion in 9 months than my own daughter. Brad stood up abruptly, his chair scraping against the floor. We don't have to sit here and be lectured like children. The papers are signed. We'll go. But Jennifer didn't stand. She sat there staring at the journal pages in her hands, reading her mother's words over and over. Mom was right, wasn't she? Her voice was barely audible. She was afraid the money would change me, but I let it change me even before I knew it existed. I became the person she feared I'd become. Something in my chest loosened slightly. It was the first genuine thing she'd said since walking into the room. Jennifer, Brad's voice had a warning tone. No. She looked up at him and there was something different in her face, something broken open. No, Brad, she's right. Mom was right. Look at us. Look at what we've become. We've become practical, Brad said. We've become adults dealing with adult problems. We abandoned my father. Jennifer's voice was stronger now, clearer. We let our financial problems turn us into people who would threaten legal action against a grieving widower. People who would drive past his house without stopping. People who cared more about money than family. That's not fair. It's completely fair. She turned to me and I saw Margaret in her eyes for the first time in years. Dad, I don't have an excuse. I don't have a reason that makes any of this okay. I was scared and stressed, and I let Brad convince me that our problems were more important than your grief. I let myself believe that you were fine, that you didn't need me, because it was easier than facing what I'd lost. What we'd both lost. I sat back down slowly. My legs felt weak. I'm not withholding the money, I said quietly. It's yours. Your mother wanted you to have it, but I needed you to understand what you sacrificed for it. You traded your father for money you didn't know existed. You traded your mother's memory for the possibility of an inheritance. You became someone who would hire lawyers to threaten me, someone who would leave angry voicemails accusing me of being vindictive. That's who you've become, Jennifer. And I needed you to see it. She nodded, tears falling freely now. I see it, God, I see it, and I hate it. Brad made a disgusted sound. This is ridiculous. Jennifer, we don't owe anyone an explanation for how we grieve or how we handle our finances. Stop. Jennifer's voice was sharp. Just stop, Brad. Listen to yourself. Listen to what you're saying. My father just lost his wife. I just lost my mother. And you're talking about not owing explanations. Brad's jaw clenched. I'm talking about not being manipulated by guilt when we've done nothing wrong. We did everything wrong. Jennifer stood now, facing him. We did everything wrong and you can't even see it. That's the problem. You've never seen it. The room went quiet except for the sound of traffic 14 floors below. Harold cleared his throat gently. Perhaps we should take a short break. No, I said. No, we're done here. I looked at Jennifer. The money transfers within 48 hours. Your mother wanted you to have security and freedom. I hope it gives you both. But understand something. You're welcome to the money, but I'm not for sale. I'm not someone you can buy back with apologies or visits now that you know what's in the account. Dad, I don't want to buy you back. I want. When you decide you want a father instead of an ATM, my door is open. Until then, we're done here. I picked up my jacket from the back of the chair. My hands were steadier now. Something had settled in me, some decision I didn't know I'd been waiting to make. Rick, Harold started. Thank you, Harold. Send me the final paperwork when it's complete. I walked to the door, my footsteps loud in the silent room. Behind me, I could hear Jennifer crying, could hear Brad's low, angry voice, could hear Harold gathering papers with careful efficiency. I didn't look back. The justice wasn't in withholding the money. Margaret wanted Jennifer to have it, and I'd honored that wish. The justice was in the mirror I'd held up, forcing them to see exactly who they'd become, what they'd chosen, what they'd sacrificed. Whether they learned anything from their reflection wasn't up to me anymore. I walked out of that conference room and left them there. Jennifer crying into her mother's journal pages, Brad calculating his next move, Harold documenting the end of an estate and maybe the end of a family. The elevator ride down felt longer than 14 floors. 6 weeks after the meeting in Harold's office, I stood on the cliffs of Moher in Ireland with Margaret's ashes in my hands and the Atlantic wind trying to knock me off my feet. May 2nd, 2024. The sky was that impossible Irish gray that's somehow a dozen different shades at once. The ocean below was dark and churning, and the wind carried the smell of salt and rain and something ancient I couldn't name. I'd used part of my inheritance, the 200,000 Margaret left me, to take the trip we'd always talked about. Someday we'll go to Ireland, she'd say, looking at travel magazines in the grocery store checkout line. We'll see where my grandmother came from. We'll drink Guinness in a real pub. Someday never came for her, but I could go for both of us. I scattered half her ashes there on the cliffs, watching the wind catch them and carry them out over the water. The rest I'd keep, maybe spread in the garden she'd loved, maybe just hold onto because I wasn't ready to let go of all of her yet. We made it, Maggie, I said into the wind. Not the way we planned, but we're here. For the first time since she died, I felt something that wasn't just grief. Permission, maybe. Permission to keep living even though she couldn't. Permission to find my own path forward. I spent a month in Ireland. Drove the Ring of Kerry. Stayed in bed and breakfast where old women served me breakfast and didn't ask why I was traveling alone. Visited libraries and churches and pubs where musicians played fiddles while people sang songs they'd known since childhood. I didn't think about Jennifer much, or I tried not to. When I got home in late May, Dorothy had planted peonies in my front garden, Margaret's favorite. They were already blooming, these huge pink and white flowers that looked too delicate for the world. "Welcome home, honey," Dorothy said when she saw me standing there looking at them. "Figured Margaret would want something beautiful here when you got back." I hugged her right there in the front yard. This 72-year-old woman who barely knew me had shown me more love in 9 months than my own daughter had. But that wasn't entirely true anymore. Jennifer had texted. Twice. The first text came the day after the meeting. "Dad, I'm so sorry. I don't know how to fix this. I don't know if I can fix this, but I need you to know I see what I did. I see who I became. I'm so sorry." I'd read it maybe 50 times, typed responses, deleted them, couldn't find words that felt true. The second text came 3 weeks later. "I'm starting therapy. Brad and I are separating. I don't expect that to change anything between us, but I wanted you to know. Would you be willing to talk sometime? I understand if you're not ready, or if you're never ready. I earned that." I'd typed and deleted responses to that one too, dozens of drafts. "Yes, not yet, I don't know, maybe someday." Nothing felt right, so I sent nothing. But Harold had called with information that mattered more than texts. "Jennifer made a donation," he said. $50,000 to the arts program at Margaret's old school, in her mother's name. She didn't publicize it, didn't tell anyone. The school called to thank me because I'm still listed as the estate attorney. That gesture meant something. It wasn't an apology, it was action. It was Jennifer actually honoring her mother instead of just claiming to. I still didn't respond to the texts, but I stopped deleting them. On a Saturday morning in late May, I was sitting on the front porch with my cinnamon coffee, still making it, still drinking it, Margaret's ritual that had become mine, when a car pulled up. My stomach clenched when I saw it was Jennifer's SUV. She got out slowly, like she wasn't sure she had the right to be there. She wasn't wearing anything designer, just jeans and a cardigan I recognized, one of Margaret's old ones, cream-colored with wooden buttons. Margaret had worn it constantly in the fall, said it was the most comfortable thing she owned. Jennifer stood at the end of the walkway. She didn't come closer, didn't presume. We looked at each other across the distance, maybe 20 feet of concrete, maybe 9 months of damage, maybe a lifetime of complicated love. "Hi, Dad," she said quietly. "Jennifer, I don't expect forgiveness. I don't expect anything." Her voice was steady but small. "I just wanted to ask. Could I maybe plant flowers with you sometime? Mom always loved doing that. I remember helping her when I was little. I thought maybe." She trailed off, waiting. I looked at her, really looked at her, and for the first time in months I saw Margaret's eyes looking back at me. Not the entitled woman in the conference room, not the daughter who'd abandoned me, but the little girl who used to make construction paper cards, the teenager who'd cried on my shoulder. The person she might still become if given the chance. The hurt was still there, the anger, the betrayal. None of that disappeared just because she showed up in her mother's cardigan, but underneath it there was something else, something stubborn and unreasonable that refused to completely let go. Hope, maybe, or just the memory of who we used to be to each other. "Next Saturday," I said, 9 o'clock in the morning, "bring gloves." Her face broke into something between a sob and a smile. "Thank you. Thank you, Dad. This doesn't fix everything, Jennifer. I know it doesn't. It doesn't mean I've forgiven you. I know. It just means I'm willing to plant flowers." She nodded, wiping at her eyes. "That's more than I deserve. I'll be here. 9 a.m. I'll bring gloves." She got back in her car and drove away. I stayed on the porch, drinking my cooling coffee, looking at Dorothy's peonies blooming in defiance of everything that had been broken. It wasn't reconciliation. Not yet. Maybe not ever in the way it used to be, but it was possibility. It was a door left slightly open. It was the truth, all of it, ugly and painful, laid bare between us. And maybe that was enough to start with. I've learned something in the year since Margaret died, something I didn't expect to learn. Sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is wait. Not wait passively, not wait helplessly, but wait with intention, with eyes open, giving people enough rope to either pull themselves up or hang themselves with. The truth always reveals itself if you give it time and space. Margaret's $5 million didn't corrupt Jennifer. That's what I used to think, that the money was the problem, that wealth was the villain in our story. But I was wrong. The money was just a mirror. It illuminated what was already there, both the worst parts and, eventually, the potential for something better. I still don't know if our relationship will heal. Some things break so completely that even the best glue leaves visible cracks. Jennifer and I have planted flowers together 3 times now. We don't talk much. We just dig in the dirt, put peonies and daisies where Margaret would have wanted them, wash our hands with the garden hose when we're done. It's not what we were. It might never be what we were. But it's something, and something is more than I had 6 months ago. I've learned that loving someone doesn't mean accepting their treatment of you, that protecting your own dignity isn't the same as seeking revenge, that you can honor someone's wishes while still demanding they face the truth of their actions. I didn't keep the inheritance secret to punish Jennifer. At least, I don't think I did. Maybe there was some of that in there. I'm not sane enough to claim pure motives. But mostly I kept it secret to answer the question Margaret posed in her journal. Would the money free her daughter or change her? The answer turned out to be both. It changed her into someone capable of abandoning her grieving father, of hiring lawyers to threaten me, of measuring family in dollars instead of presents. But the revelation of it, the moment she saw herself clearly in that conference room, might be freeing her into someone capable of real regret, real growth, real change. Margaret's teacup collection is still on the shelf in the dining room, all 73 of them catching the light through the window. I don't talk to them every day anymore. But on hard days when the house feels too empty and the silence is too loud, I still do. And somehow that's okay. I'm learning to live with both things being true, that I lost my wife and I'm surviving it, that I lost my daughter and I might be getting her back. That grief and hope can exist in the same heart in the same moment without canceling each other out. Family is complicated. Grief is messy. And money reveals character like nothing else can. It strips away pretense and politeness and forces people to show you who they really are when something they want is on the line. If this story moved you, if it made you feel something or think about your own family dynamics, please hit that like button and subscribe to this channel. Stories like this, real stories about real conflicts and impossible choices, matter because they remind us we're not alone in our complications. And I want to hear from you. Leave a comment below and tell me, have you ever had to make someone face the consequences of their actions, even when it hurt you too? Have you ever had to choose between protecting yourself and protecting a relationship? How did it turn out? Are you glad you made the choice you made, or do you wish you'd done something different? Your stories matter. Your experiences matter. And sometimes just knowing someone else has walked through similar fire makes our own burns feel a little less isolating. I don't regret my choice. I don't regret making Jennifer see who she'd become, even if it meant 9 months of waiting and watching and wondering if I was doing the right thing. The truth was painful, but it was still the truth. And the truth, as they say, will set you free, even if the freedom looks different than you imagined. I hope someday Jennifer doesn't regret it either. I hope she looks back and understands that the hardest gift I ever gave her wasn't the $5 million her mother left. It was the mirror that showed her who she'd become and the space to decide if that's who she wanted to stay. Margaret always said I was patient to a fault. She was right about that too. Thank you for listening to my story. Thank you for being here. And remember, family isn't about perfection. It's about truth, even when truth is uncomfortable. Especially when truth is uncomfortable. Take care of yourselves. And maybe call someone you love today before it's too late to say the things that matter.